And we are back for another episode of ClubCast. After the first two, where we talked about the trade deadline and recapping the trade deadline, now we're branching off as we start to get through the middle half of August and we make that September push that gets us to October into the postseason. So we got a couple things to talk about today, a lot of things in the National League East, Dodgers, Phillies. That's what we like to talk about. And then we'll talk about a couple other subjects, especially some more sensitive ones with Wander Franco at the end. But we got a good one here today. So, I'm Cody. That's Jake. We'll be here try to get this done every week. But yeah, so trade deadline came and gone. Now we're in August. We're pushing towards October. We're starting to see what teams were buyers, sellers. That's already gone. Now we're seeing what teams are actually playoff contenders now. We've seen teams like the Angels who happen to be buyers at the deadline, and they've been on a tailspin. They're 8 games out of a wild card now. But moving to the National League, there's really, in my opinion, and we touched on it a little bit last episode as well, there's really only 3 big teams that I think are the ones that are actually going to make a run at the World Series. And obviously, I would say it's the Braves, Dodgers, and Phillies as like the top 3. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last time. I think it's kind of becoming more clear. The Giants are holding ground. The Marlins are another team like the Angels we talked about that since the trade deadline have been pretty bad. There's not a lot of competition. It's a lot of top end, more in the NL, with those top 2 teams. And then I mean, the way the Phillies have played, I mean, especially on the road, I think I heard something on the radio. They had a 690 winning percentage on the road in the last like 30 road games. Like that's insane. And then you come back home to a stadium like that, and I mean, we saw what happened last postseason. That's just a different environment. I think just watching the team play every day, it just looks like an even better team than last year. And while the beginning of the season wasn't as hot, I think, I mean, we saw the last 60 games, the Phillies and Braves both won 40. Top 2 teams in the league since then, and the Dodgers with the third team with 36 in the last 60. These teams are all elite. I mean, they're probably the 3 best teams next to Baltimore and the Astros. That's your top 5 right there. It's not not a lot of debate in the NL.
Yeah, I definitely like Atlanta is that team to me that is similar to the Dodgers last year, where they're kind of gonna run away with the division. They already have a big enough lead, but it's kind of looking big picture for them. Can they sustain the success from the regular season to the postseason?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big question for them because when I look at their starting rotation, I'm not really scared in a lot of ways. And that's kind of what ended up killing the Dodgers last year is that they really only had maybe 2 starters that could actually go deep into games. And when those 2 starters couldn't get the wins, well, they went 1-1. Kershaw lost, Urias won. They couldn't get past the first round. And last year's Dodgers team had a really good offense. They had a really good bullpen, and it just didn't work out. And the Braves are kind of, I don't want to hate on the Braves. It seems like they're kind of going on that trajectory, like they're dominating every team, and they're beating the teams they need to beat, the bad teams, and then they're beating the teams that are going to be in their way come October, and that includes in the division where. When I look at the division, the only team that probably could give them a run for their money is the Phillies, but they've already built such a big lead, like it's already over 10 games at this point in the season. I don't think you're going to see many teams come back from that, even with the Phillies playing as well as they are. And I don't think the Phillies really care. It's the same mentality as last year. They're just looking to get in. And I think personally, you can agree or disagree. I'm interested. I think the Phillies prefer the wild card spot because then it gets them battle tested in the first round and the wild card round. You take off of that and then you go. And likely, I think the way the seedings line up, you play Atlanta. So if you're going to make it back to the World Series again, you're going to have to beat probably both of these teams in the Dodgers and the Braves. So you might as well just start that off in the first round.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think one thing is just Philly in general likes to be the underdog. I mean, it's just how it is. It's kind of cliche, but you saw it with every other team. I mean, every team that's overachieved in Philly has always not finished good. So it's funny, but I mean, yeah, I've said it a couple years ago that the honestly the home field advantage thing doesn't really work a lot because I mean in the DS you have 2 home games and then you have 2 away games. Most series are going 4 games usually. So those home teams on those last 2 games, I mean, you split one away, you're winning games. You know what I mean? That's what happened last year. The Phillies have been historically good in game one, and then you go home and you win. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, and that's not even mentioning the fact that I don't know if you looked at they announced the postseason like schedule, like the preliminary like schedule, and I guess they're ditching the traditional like 2 games off day, 2 games, and then another off day for the division series. Because I think the National I noticed it with the American League last year, where they had like an off day after game one, and then they played, and then they had another off day. It was like weird, and that's how the National League's setting up this year. So it kind of tailors it to the wild card team. Because say you even play all 3 of those games, say the Phillies use Nola, Wheeler, and Lorenzen. Well, you play game one of you get a game off in between then you play game one, then you have another off day. It kind of resets the rotation where now, all right, I'm sending maybe my 4th starter for game one, which would be Ranger Suarez, which he's shown he's done good in big games. And then you're going probably back to Wheeler, whoever started the wild card game one. So I think it kind of eliminates the advantages of the home field now, especially when we've seen division rivals face each other so many times in the early matchups of the division series and it's kind of been 50-50. We've had some big upsets the past couple years. So, anybody can win. And then in terms of the Dodgers, everyone said it was going to be a down year. I never said it was going to be a down year. I just said it was just going to be a retooling year. They ended up, in my mind, they're kind of exceeding my expectations because they're on their way to probably winning close to 100 games again, which would be, I think, 100 wins for full seasons. They did it in 17, 19, 21, 22. So this would be like their 5th one, which I mean, that's kind of unheard of in baseball. Even when the Braves were in their division runs in the 90s, they dominated the league, but they never really ran away with it with multiple 100-win seasons. So for that to be in their retooling year, that's pretty scary. But they're getting a lot of guys back. They expected that to happen last year and it didn't work out with like Dustin May and all that. But I mean, maybe you throw the same thing at the wall. Eventually, it'll stick. And the biggest one is Bueller coming back, which he's potentially going to be an opener in the playoffs. They said Blake Trinan's actually throwing a bullpen now. Shelby Miller, who has like a sub-3 ERA for us in the bullpen, he's about to come back. You're going to get a lot of these arms, and the Dodgers pitching, which at the first half of the year looked like it was a question mark. Now it looks like it's a strength for them going in to October, which I think is the best thing you want. And the Dodgers, they're not looking at the division anymore. I mean, they kind of ran away with it now. The D-backs have fallen off. Even with the Giants keeping steady, they're still 9 games out. Someone tweeted out this is the most games that the LA has gained in a short period of time since the All-Star break or since the trade deadline. I think the Giants may have been like 3 or 2 games out. Now they're 9. D-backs are like 11 or 14, and the Padres are 14 as well. So they're looking forward to the playoffs, and I think the 2 teams they're going to eventually have to play is either the Braves or the Phillies, depending on where it happens. So that's on their mind, and I definitely think these 3 teams are definitely going to be the ones in contention at the latter half of October.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the Dodgers down years, 100-win season, kind of wild. It's like what we always see, man. When you see big changes, it was like, oh, this big deal. Honestly, we're gonna talk about it, so let's just talk about it. remember when Matt Olson replacing Freddie Freeman was going to be this big deal, and now both people are just MVPs. Like
Yeah.
the Dodgers and the Braves, they're going to win baseball games. Like you said, it's a retooling year. It's a 100-win season. Freddie Freeman is an MVP, and you have like 4 MVP. You have 4 MVPs on either team. They're going to win every year. It feels like.
Yeah, and honestly, transitioning to that, we obviously are kind of getting a clearer picture when it comes to like the awards down at the end of the season, which I think the American League, it's kind of hard. It's like the Shohei Ohtani clause. It's kind of hard not to pick him in the American League. So I don't really know who else. Maybe Robert makes a run for it, but I don't really see anyone else in the American League that can challenge him. The National League, however, it's a little bit different because I think there's 4 guys on 2 teams that are realistically going to make a shot at winning the award. And you could say it's 2 players from the Dodgers and it's 2 players from the Braves. And the 2 that we're going to focus on is already who you mentioned, and Freddie Freeman. Steady Freddie is what a lot of Dodger fans like to call him. Is that he's just one of the most consistent like MLB hitters. I've mentioned it to you like just in passing in conversation, where I think just looking at the way he goes about hitting, his stature in the batter's box, like everything he does is just. If I had to coach baseball, I would literally just put him out there and look at him. And Dave Roberts was interviewed the other day, and he agreed because in a series when they were playing the Padres last weekend, he compared him as the modern day Tony Gwynn. And honestly, I don't think there'll ever be another Tony Gwynn, but I feel like Freddie is like the next best thing because not only does he hit for high average, he just puts the ball in play. And he finds holes in the defense. He'll slap a base hit. He hits righties. He hits lefties. I feel like if Freddie Freeman wanted to hit 40 home runs, he could, but he would rather just get a bunch of doubles, a decent amount of homers, and just getting on base, whether it's walking or getting a single. And like just looking at this year, he already has 43 doubles.
Yeah.
And he's on pace to at least break the Dodgers record for doubles, which I believe is 54. It would break the record, and no one's hit 60 doubles in a season since I think they said like the 1930s, which would just be like incredible. Like Dodger Stadium's a pretty big outfield. I mean, we've seen it in person, but like even just looking at it, if you're playing like MLB The Show or just on TV, that's just if you can get one in the gaps in between the outfielders out there, it's an automatic double nearly every time. But Freddie, he's having a really good year. He's got a 336 batting average, which is, I believe, top 3 or top 5 in the National League. He's got 23 home runs. He's got 43 doubles, like I already mentioned. Surprisingly, Freddie's a speedster and leads the Dodgers in stolen bases with 16, which I thought was pretty wild. But one of the things they like to say about him is that he's just a base stealer and he runs the bases really well. And that's something that like a fan like me or someone who watches more Dodger games regularly, you can only see that if you watch a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just, like I said, like an all-around great baseball player. But 83 RBIs from the 2-hole is pretty good too. He's hitting right behind Betts. Betts gets on, he hits him in. That's usually been the theme this year. And then another thing, as a first baseman, it can be a hard position to field. And I think last week was the first error he made all year, and he's played every single game this season. So he has a very elite fielding percentage at .99.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Freddie Freeman, watching him for 8 years or whatever he was in Atlanta was like one of the best things and one of the worst things. It's like you're watching this elite baseball player that does everything good, but then he's playing against you fucking 18 times a year or whatever it used to be. It's like Freddie, now you're seeing it. He's an elite base runner. Nobody realizes that. He looks like a giraffe, but he's like just his timing and his instincts, his baseball instincts are so good. That's what makes him such a good baseball player, obviously. But he just does everything well. It's just fun to watch him. Like I said earlier, I thought there'd be a bigger drop off when he left Atlanta, but the Braves have some guys over there. Well, I guess I'll start talking about them. And then Ronald Acuna is the other guy. One of those two guys over in Atlanta that we were going to touch on today, Matt Olson and Ronald Acuna. 338 average, so it's around the same as Freddie's. Freddie's slugging a bit more, which I like. I'd rather you slug than do what Acuna's doing, but we're going to talk about it. 55 stolen bases. That's kind of wild. That's going to be the knock on his difference between Freddie is that he's stealing more bases. Freddie's got 12 less singles. Like you pointed on, he's leading the league in doubles. 43 doubles is insane. He's got 40 some games left, 40 games left, something like that.
Yeah, that's like career high in doubles for like probably 98% of the league. So.
I saw that earlier when I was looking up his stats, and I was like 43 because that's he had like 69 or 67 extra base hits, and 55 stolen bases is cool, but like you said, Freddie Freeman leads the Dodgers in stolen bases. Dodgers don't steal bases; they just slug and they play baseball well. It's a different scheme. Stolen bases to me, it's an impressive stat, but it's not something that I would give Acuna over Freddie. I like the way Freddie plays. It's really my thing. I think my deciding factor is right now. I hate to say it, leaning towards Acuna just because that team and they're the best team in the league. I don't like doing that, but it's so close. Like it's to the numbers, like difference between the guys. A lineup is better. The team is better, and they are cheating, but you can't knock Acuna for that. So I would have to push towards Acuna right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. If the season ended today, I think Acuna would win. I think it's just a bigger discussion that not many people are talking about. Now they're starting to talk about it because a lot of fans on like Twitter and social media, they're actually making like cases for other guys that should be in the conversation. Because if you asked this question a couple weeks ago, I mean, Braves fans on Twitter would have just attacked you because they think Acuna is by far leagues above everybody else. And I think like Freeman has been consistently good all year, but when he gets super hot, a lot of these stats could start to favor in his favor. Like they're so close in certain stats, like 1 or 2 points, like batting average, OPS, and all that if Freddie gets into a really good stride and Acuna, say he gets either hurt or he starts to struggle a little bit, then you're starting to talk about, all right, Freeman's like starting to get ahead of Acuna. But I think this, like Acuna, the season he's putting together, like 55 stolen bases, that's a lot for, they did change the rule that makes stealing bases a lot easier. So I'm surprised not many people have like gotten close to hit that number. Cause I mean, like, I feel like that's the one thing at the beginning of the year, a lot more teams were stealing and then it kind of dropped off a little bit. But Acuna, 55 stolen bases, and we're only in August. He's definitely going to get a lot more. So you're kind of looking at, that's the most stolen bases. I can't even remember who's had that many stolen bases since we've been watching. Like that's been like a lost art in the game. That's not a thing that people do anymore. But I definitely think it's a conversation that will definitely be had at the end of the year. Another thing that hurts Freddie Freeman is that first basemen don't usually win MVP. And I don't know if it's like Paul Goldschmidt winning last year was like, I mean, it never really happens. First basemen usually don't win. It's usually like an outfielder's award or like a shortstop, third baseman, something like that. For whatever reason, first basemen usually get the short end of the stick. And I think the reason why we talked about it a little bit before is because right now Acuna's WAR is like almost a full win higher, and that's just because, it is too. And that's just because of the emphasis on defense. So the way they value it is they value outfield defense a lot better than first base. Because if you look at their fielding percentage, Acuna's played a couple of different positions in the outfield this year, and he has a 978 when, like I mentioned before, Freeman only has 1 error on the whole year. So I guess they just value it a little bit differently. But I don't think you can always look at WAR and say it's the end all be all. You have to look at other stats too. And both of these guys are definitely helping carry their teams to where they want to go. And then, like you mentioned already, just to give them the other name is Matt Olson. I mean,
Mhm.
I think Matt Olson's good, but I don't think he should win MVP just because he's hitting a lot of homers. It's not like Judge last year, and a lot of Braves fans are on Twitter saying, why isn't this getting a lot of attention? This home run chase between Olson and Ohtani. Okay, well, Judge was chasing the AL record last year, and Olson's not going to get close. He's not going to get close to. He would have to break Bond's record to break the NL record, and he's not going to hit over 73 home runs. And Olson, he's a power hitter, but his batting average is really low. I mean, he has played every game for the Braves this year, so he's similar to Freeman on that front. But other than that, I mean, yeah, he'll be there because he's on a really good Braves team that's rolling right now. So you can put him up there. And then the other one on the Dodgers, I would just say is Betts. And we've touched on it before, and I've touched on it a bunch of times. I just think for how versatile he's been this year, to be able to play right field, second base, and shortstop, and to he's about to hit his career high in homers in August, which he hit him 35 last year, I believe it was. He's well on his way to hitting at least 40 this year, which is kind of amazing. This is probably the best hitting version of Mookie Betts the Dodgers have seen since like the 2020 season, and now we're seeing it for a whole 162 game stretch where he's another guy. If he gets hot, he can raise his batting average over 300. I'm one of those guys that still looks at batting average, so that's a big thing for me. But I still think it's gonna come down to Acuna versus Freeman, and I would still give it to Acuna right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. Those guys are going to be there just mostly because these teams are so good. I mean, if you're going to win that many games, you have to have some good guys on there. But Mookie Betts would have an MVP year if these other two guys weren't snap. Cunha and Freddie Freeman are having incredible years. Mookie Betts is having another MVP year, rivaling the 2018 year. I mean, if not better than that year. You know what I mean? It's tough. It's tough for those guys when you're stacked in a lineup like that to really boost your own name, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and then it's just that the Braves, they're that team this year that is getting the most press, getting the most media attention, and that's nothing coming against them. They got the best record in baseball right now for that exact reason. So, because of that, they're going to have the stars that everybody's looking at. All right, well, I always think the MVP should at least majority of the times come from a playoff contender. Not necessarily make the playoffs, but at least a contender. But when you're looking at the best team in baseball right now, then you kind of just have to start picking and choosing. Like, all right, if I took Acuna away from the Braves, does that still make them are they still a playoff team? I would still say yes because they won the World Series without him. So that's where you kind of get iffy on the subject, but you can't take anything away from Acuna and these guys. All of them that we've mentioned, they're all having really good years. And like I said, like you mentioned it, Betts, I mean, his best year probably since 2018, which is saying something because that year he pretty much did everything that you could as a batter and pretty much ran away with that MVP on arguably one of the best baseball teams of all time that rolled all the way to the World Series. So I definitely agree with all of that. But, let's transition to one of the guys we talked about a lot during our trade deadline.
I think he may be becoming a Diamond Club boy, honestly.
Yeah, he may be coming. We got him. I like him for a couple of reasons. You like him for a bunch of reasons. But let's talk about big Michael Lorenzen and get your thoughts. There you go. Yeah, forgot the All-Star.
Come on, man. He's a dog. I said it. I didn't think we'd get this. I mean, 17 innings, 1 run, fucking 3 hits, whatever he gave up, no hitter in the first game at home. I mean, this guy's is just insane. His fastball was working real well. His changeup. Apparently, him and Caleb Cotham were boys, apparently, and nobody knew that. I think it was in Cincinnati because Caleb Cotham pitched in 2016, which I didn't realize that. But anyway, he taught him his changeup again. He changed his grip up, and that pitch was moving like crazy on during the no hitter. He also works in his slider real well. I mean, one thing I will say about that no hitter that wasn't about Lorenzen, it's not a knock on him, but Johan Rojas had like 15 outs. He had like 18 fly ball outs that game, and half of them went to Johan Rojas, who has the most defensive run saves since he came to the majors. Just saying. But no, we love him. I mean, I'm sure you're gonna throw some stats at me about him, but that night was beautiful.
Yeah, I definitely give credit to Rob Thompson because it's not very often you see a guy let their pitcher go out there that's supposed to be part of the bigger picture throw 100, what was it, 25 pitches?
123, I think it was.
Yeah. So that's a lot of pitches, and that's the first time I've seen that in a good bit. I think the last pitcher that threw like over 100 in my head that was on the Dodgers, I can't even remember it. I think it was Bauer. I think it was Trevor Bauer actually, and he pitched a complete game in a loss. So, and he had 100 and I think almost 20. So, but it just doesn't happen anymore. So credit to him for letting him go out there and chase history, because I feel like you need that in baseball. I mean, we've seen it a bunch of times, and just last year, we like last year, beginning of the year, Kershaw's first start against Minnesota, he's cruising, and they pulled him out in the 7th inning. He didn't have that many pitches. I think he had 70 or 80, so he was reasonably healthy enough to go out there, and Dave Roberts pulled him, and then they ended up, at least they didn't lose the game like they did with Ross Stripling a long time ago. But it's one of those things where it's like, I'm dying to see that like excitement again. And when you get players like Kershaw who like deserve another chance at like a perfect game or a no hitter again, kind of bums me out. But seeing Michael Lorenzen doing it in Philly in his first home start, rocking the Vans, that's another point for me. So I definitely, and seeing just his family, like in the videos and all that, and just the fans. I mean, I've seen a bunch of, didn't someone hit their first MLB home run, and it was like a career minor leaguer that night too. It was just, I guess, a really good day to be a Phillies fan and to be a Phillies player. And you kind of need some of these guys like that, man. A lot of people we talked about, they were making fun of Lorenzen for being on the All-Star team, and he's been pretty dominant since then. So he must have heard them and then kicked it up a notch. I definitely like what you mentioned about him introducing a changeup, because I think my biggest thing that I like to look into after the trade deadline is when starters or like mainly pitchers, when they go over to new teams and seeing what they change, because I've already seen them change up Lance Lynn's repertoire to try to get him to not give up as many home runs, and Lorenzen learning how to the grip on a changeup again. I mean, if you learn how to throw a changeup, like that's a really good pitch that not many people can 100% say they can throw with a lot of accuracy, a lot of movement, and that they're confident with. So the Phillies. One of the things I saw that was posted today is that since the All-Star break, they actually have, I think it was the second or third best rotation or pitching ERA altogether, and it was around 3. Let me see.
It was 3.68. I saw the same thing.
Yeah. So since the All-Star break, which I think it was Cleveland,
which was like 2.5, which was
because they got Noah Syndergaard. He threw a shutout in his first game, and then he got hurt. So, but yeah, this is going to be a guy that is going to help the Phillies moving forward. I mean, I don't think anyone can say as a Phillies fan, even you saying, yeah, I fully expected Lorenzen to go 8 innings and then throw a 9-inning no-hitter. Like, no one would have said that. You would have been happy to get, like you mentioned before, when you said the reason why you wanted him is because he can eat innings, and it essentially creates a 6-man rotation for the Phillies, which at this point in the year, Nola hasn't been super sharp. Wheeler wasn't sharp in the beginning of the year, but it's now starting to settle in. It gives these guys some breathing room, and that goes a long way when you get to the postseason. Because then once you get to the postseason, you don't need 6 guys in the rotation, especially in the wild card round. 3 of those guys can just go kick into the bullpen, and that's pretty much a plan of attack for a lot of teams in the playoffs. So I definitely think it'll go a long way. But yeah, Lorenzen, he seems like a Philly guy. We definitely Diamond Club boy, and we definitely, you mentioned it. You thought you want to get him for an extension. You want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, man, it was a nice surprise. I mean, who expected this to be this good? I like what you said. The 6-man rotation is good, especially when we get the playoffs, man. Ranger Suarez coming out of the bullpen in the wild card round would be a very good weapon to have. That would be very nice. But you also have like Chris Sanchez who can slide back. He's got a good changeup, another lefty. Even Taiwan Walker, I'm pretty sure he can work out a couple innings out of the bullpen. He's going to be the 4th starter. So it gives you options, and like you said, and like I posted the other day, it gives you options for next year. I mean, Nola he gave up 2 runs before 4 runs before I started this, so I don't want to say it, but they're averaging like 5 years 110 or something. Like hell yeah, if that's what it's going to be. I don't think it'll be that, but if that's what it's going to be, we can sign him 100%. But like 7 for 200, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I looked up on Spot Track or whatever it's called about the contract situations, and they're expecting Lorenzen to be around the average of Tyler Anderson and John Gray and contracts like that. For a guy like this, I mean, I imagine it'll increase a little bit because he's having such a good second half. But I mean, 4 for 60, 4 for 65, 4 for 70. I'm still in on Michael Lorenzen. I mean, that's a good another starter, another bridge guy. Gives you an option for next year if Wheeler. I mean, if he's still there, you can pay him. If he's going, you can leave him be. It's just options, man. It's good to have.
Yeah, I'm interested. Do you know if Aaron Nola is eligible to receive a qualifying offer? Like, is he allowed to get offered that? I feel like that goes into like the planning, because I think I saw that you mentioned the projected salary. I think the way contracts have been, I just feel like everybody's going to get more than what they're projected. Right. And that's just to go with everything that's going on in the world. Inflation, MLB's making more money than they ever have. And some teams are really desperate for starting pitching. So I think the Phillies, I don't know, because he's been consistently their best pitcher, even with Wheeler on the team. He's been their best pitcher probably for the past like 6 years. And we've seen him come up, and even last year in the postseason, he had some big games along with Wheeler. But I mean, when you think of Phillies rotation, it was pretty much headlined by him. So I feel like the Phillies will attempt to keep him. But if that qualifying offer is there and they think that the market's going to be high on him, I imagine they're going to offer it to him, and then he'll likely reject. But I mean, if he leaves, and at least you get the draft pick, and then you could get the draft pick and then sign Michael Lorenzen for, I mean, no matter how many years you get him, he's going to be less than Aaron Nola. So it's kind of things you have to think about, and that's kind of what the Dodgers and Julio Urias' situation is in, is that Julio's had a pretty shitty year as well, like for a guy that has been in the Cy Young conversation in the National League along with Nola. They're both having pretty subpar years. Both of them are starting to kind of get their stuff together a little bit as we get towards the end of the year. But I mean, I don't know many teams. I don't think the home teams like the Phillies and the Dodgers are going to outbid with other teams because they see what they have. So if anyone knows how they're going to project for the rest of their career, or at least whatever type of contract they're getting, they would know the best. So you could see both teams probably walking away from those guys. So that'll be interesting to watch as we get down.
Yeah. Let's go right into it then. Speaking of knowing a lot, knowing the best from the Dodgers, also another guy who's going to get a big contract, Cody Bellinger, man. How are you feeling, man? Cody Bellinger's back. MVP Belly is here.
Yeah, I definitely saw this coming when it happened. I remember my emotions at a bar watching Bellinger get pinch hit he didn't start the game, and then he went into pinch hit on the last game of the NLDS, Game 4, and that iconic photo that I have for the article I wrote where I said they would regret not non-tendering him.
Yeah.
Bellinger walking slowly away in the rain. I mean, I think I mentioned it last time where I just think he needed to change his scenery. There was reports going around that he just wasn't listening. He was listening to the coaches, but when you start listening to everybody that's giving you information and they're giving you so much information of different things and none of it clicks, I think as a player, and I've watched and listened to other players like in baseball talk that sometimes you just got to trust yourself. And I think he went somewhere and started to trust himself. This is also the first year he's like fully 100% healthy. He had a shin injury. It was like a fractured shin. Then he had Kiki Hernandez kill him in 2020, and he was recovering from a shoulder injury, which everyone thinks, all right, well, he got the surgery and he did the rehab, so he's fine. No, everybody in baseball says that shoulder injuries take almost a year or two to fully heal. I mean, look at Tatis. I mean, Tatis used to be the superstar. It could be the PEDs. It could be that his shoulder's still healing. So, but it's a big injury, and this is the full first year that he's fully recovered from all of it, and he's playing like the 2019 Cody Bellinger. The only thing that's different is he's not blowing anyway away with his power, but he's got the highest batting average I've ever seen him have, and like currently right now he's batting well over 300 at 325, and then he just won NL Player of the Month, and he batted 400 that month. So he definitely has changed some things in his swing, but he already had such a sweet swing in my mind. It was just effortless, and now he's starting to play really well. So I know you wanted the Phillies to get him at the deadline. It'll definitely be one of the teams that I think that'll be super interested in him in the off season. So Cody Bellinger train. I mean, what kind of contract does he get?
I don't see why he doesn't get a big deal. I mean, he's been healthy for, like you said, it's a change of scene. It's one of those guys that had the talent. We knew it was going to do good, just needed something to click, something to change. I like what you said. I think he was a big feel guy. He probably was getting a lot of people telling him things, and just looking at his swing, does it look like he listened to his coaches growing up? I mean, it's not like technically sound at all, but it works. So yeah. I think what you said, he went to Chicago and was like, hey, I can do whatever I want. Let me just try to hit the baseball. And that's what he's doing. I mean, he's still slugging 551. It's 20 points slower than Acuna.
Well, he did miss like almost a month of the year because of, I think it was when he at Houston, he ran into the wall or whatever.
Right.
And so you say he stays that hot and he gets to this point of the year, you could say maybe, all right, just in the last month where he hit, I think 8 home runs, maybe add like 4 or 5, and now he's well over 20. So you're looking at maybe he's entering like the top 10 MVP race with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, we know what he's doing in the field. He's an elite fielder wherever you play him, center field, first base. It doesn't matter. That's another big reason why I wanted him on the Phillies. But it's a really good player. It's just a guy that needed to change the scenery that worked, and I think he'll get a big deal. The Cubs seem to actually be trying. So they still have, I think, Stroman's there next year. They still have like Happ, guys like that. That could be a place for him.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's one team that everybody is starting to getting an idea of, like they're almost ready to compete. Mm-hmm. Like they've been really hot this year. They could make the playoffs. I still think they may go on like another little magical run and then end up winning the division. Like you said, I don't believe in the Brewers 100%, especially the Dodgers are playing the Brewers this week. Dodgers are on a 9-game win streak. I am expecting us to sweep the Brewers. If the Cubs win like 2-3 games this week, then they're probably tied in the division. So the Cubs contract situations. So Stroman's thing is a little iffy. He's been really good the whole year, but I think there was a tweet today that he has some type of structural damage or something like that that's bothering him, and they don't know when he's coming back. As a player who he has an opt-out, who was looking to opt out and get the big payday, you kind of have to start weighing your options, because how many teams are going to give you that guaranteed contract knowing you have like some sort of injury that's obviously, because you looked at his previous 3 starts, he was awful. Like you're talking about Cy Young contender, and now he probably just eliminated himself because he had back-to-back outings of giving up 7 or more runs. But if, say, he gets healthy this year and next year, he could definitely be a big part of the Cubs. Bellinger's only 28, and I mean, like, that's really young. And technically, the Dodgers non-tendered him, so that means that this would have been like his final year in LA regardless, and then he would be testing the free agent market anyway. So you're looking at the same age that most free agent players go to be a free agent. So I definitely think he could get a 5 or 6 year deal and probably around 25 million per year. Obviously it's not going to be like what everyone was projecting when he was in 2019. Like, oh, he's probably going to be like a 35 to $40 million player, but he definitely is going to get a decent sized contract. I think he could get a 5-year, $200 million deal for a lot of clubs. And I think the Cubs, they have money. I mean, they're one of the most well-known franchises in sports. So, and if he feels comfortable there, from everything that I've seen is that he does. He's having a really good time playing at Wrigley. He loves the coaches, fan base. I mean, they're one of the better fan bases in sports. Why not stay in Chicago or make things interesting and come back to LA? Because I'm a little sad. So, but no, I definitely think Philly could be an option, but I just feel like he vibes well with the Cubs. It just depends on what they want to do because they seem to have an issue of giving out really big contracts. I mean, we saw what they did with their 2016 championship team. Everybody that came up to be a free agent, they traded them away. And so it really just depends on what they want to do. So Bellinger, he's back. Yelich is back. 2019, we're back. That means there's going to be a pandemic next year. So get ready. But I'm glad that he's playing really well. I'm interested to see where he takes the Cubs this year. And if the Cubs end up playing the Dodgers in that first round, I'm going to be sad.
Shit out of him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when he came to LA, he robbed a homer, hit a homer, and so it was all over the place with emotions. But that's a regular season game. If he ends up eating him in the playoffs, that's a whole different situation. So
yeah, man. I mean, it'll be fun. Cody Bellinger's going to be a dog. The big contract. The Cubs, Chicago just seems cool, man. They have a vibe, like you said. After Stroman came out and was like, F this new style of, winner get out. Like, they all were like, why don't we just start winning instead? And then they won't trade us. Like, I mean, Dansby's been snapping. Stroman was snapping before he got hurt. Hap's been hitting good. Cody Bellinger's, playing incredible. The Cubs could be good. Like you said, they have a shit ton of money. They're one of the most recognizable sports franchises in history. Like, I don't know. It's just a different vibe over there. Not speaking of the south side of Chicago, which has a different vibe as well. They have a different vibe. If you want to talk about that, I know Tim Anderson's your boy, so.
Yeah, going from one side of Chicago to the other, it's been a whole different type of year. These past couple of seasons, it wasn't that long ago the White Sox were in the playoffs playing against the Astros, where they had a lot of young talent. They had power, they had pitching, speed, defense, and maybe not defense, but they had a really good team. But they had a lot of upside. And even in this season, a lot of people picked them to win the division. I didn't, so we can put them out there. I said the Twins are winning. So, but the White Sox, when you have players that they have, like Tim Anderson, I mean, he won a batting title a couple years ago. Dylan Cease, Luis Robert, they had Lance Lynn. I mean, they had all these guys that it should have been in a division that's as bad as theirs is, that they should have easily ran away with it. And there's been a lot of stuff coming around now that's kind of concerning if you're a fan of the White Sox. One of the big things aside, Tim Anderson, I kind of feel bad for him because I feel like he's been black. Like everyone's pointing the finger at him and making it seem like he's the problem. I think Tim Anderson's I think what's making him so frustrated is I think he just wants to be on a winning team. And he's not on a winning team, so he's obviously getting frustrated. His play isn't helping that either. I mean, he's been playing really bad these past couple of years, but we all saw the Tim Anderson versus Jose Ramirez fight. That's a big thing that's concerning. For whatever reason, I don't know if Anderson got CTE after the game and started going on a Twitter tirade, tweeting at. Honestly, he sent these tweets to the void because everybody was commenting.
Antonio Brown Twitter moment.
Yeah, they said we can't even tell if these are him because one, they took away the verifications on like Twitter, and they were like, "Is this really him? Like this can't be him." Then there was tweets about him saying he was gonna basically pull up on Ramirez and with his boys and jump him essentially, and then he deleted it. But nothing's ever gone on the internet, so that's a big concern for the clubhouse right there. His head's not fully in it. I don't know if you saw the thing about him and Grandal. Did you see anything like that? Yeah. So that kind of paints Tim Anderson in good light, I think.
I agree. 100%.
Grandal seemed like an asshole in that sense where, all right, they're on a shitty team. He's like, I don't want to be in the lineup the day before the All-Star game or break. I want to leave early. Sorry, buddy.
Right.
I love Grandal, but you're on the roster. They're paying you to play baseball. You're healthy. There's literally one day until you have a whole week off because you're not an All-Star. Like, just play the game. And Tim Anderson, he said, if he doesn't want to be here, I'll pay for his flight. Tell him to get out of here. And then Grandal, this is all allegedly, but I feel like it actually did happen. So, and then Grandal having the audacity to just slap him for that. I'm like, damn, I feel bad for Tim Anderson there. Maybe that's why he's acting like this, like right now. And then there's a whole thing about the team culture that's been getting thrown out there. The guy that got traded to the Yankees on the deadline, Middleton, he called out their culture, saying that no rules in the clubhouse and stuff like that, and pretty much guys could do whatever they want. There was no accountability. And then they asked Lance Lynn on one of the shows, and then he he said, I can tell you if they aren't true or whatever, and he just like stood there and silent. He was like, all right. So I don't know if that makes Lance Lynn, because he's supposed to be a veteran. Like, shouldn't he be one of those guys that's coming around there? I just think Lance Lynn's one of those guys that just doesn't really care.
Right.
Like, he's like, not saying he doesn't care about the team. He's just like, I'm just going to do me.
He's doing his own thing.
He's like, this team's fucking horrible. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to try to get traded. So I'm going to get a 6 ERA and go to the Dodgers. But
exactly what he was doing.
If you were a fan of the White Sox, wouldn't this like make you want to pull your hair out? Because I feel like this isn't something that either of our teams have ever had.
I was literally going to compare it to the Sixers, like right now. Like this is retarded. What is going on in Chicago? I like what you said earlier. It allegedly, but like it all aligns together. Like you have this really good on paper team that has, multiple people saying it has no rules in the clubhouse and things going on behind the scenes. And then you have stories that people get, and then you have them getting into fights, and then you have stories behind them getting into fights. It's all allegedly, but it all kind of aligns. The Chicago White Sox should be better than what they are.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. We like shitting on Tim Anderson because he has like stone hands at shortstop, but like I do feel bad for him. I would have done the same thing for Grandal. Like, what if the catcher blows his knee out in the middle of the game and we have nobody to catch now because he wanted to go home a day early? Like, it's not like he's not getting paid a lot. Like, come on, man. Like, play one more game. And the Ramirez thing, I think he was just like, I'm over this shit. I'm just gonna fight him and then go to jail. Like he's like, I don't even care anymore. I just don't want to be here, like you said. Which if he was in LA, probably wouldn't have happened. But yeah, I couldn't handle this, man. I thought I had it bad.
Yeah, I think the baddest you could say about the Phillies clubhouse in recent years is when. What was the year when Rhys Hoskins was playing Fortnite? And then Carlos Santana.
It was not Rhys Hoskins. It probably was. They didn't say it. I thought you were gonna say when they're all Trump supporters, they ain't let him into Canada. I
Oh
think
no,
that's
no,
true.
no, 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 no.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of when Santana took his bat and beat the shit out
don't
of
say that name
TV.
around me. Don't say that
So,
name around me, man.
but
He hit 300 for the Indians, came to Philly and hit 230, and then went back to the Indians, hit 300 again.
yeah.
Don't ever say it.
But I kind of think, like, before we segue to the next topic, I kind of think that the biggest reason the White Sox kind of took a tailspin after 2020 is because they dug up Tony La Russa out of the goddamn grave to get him to manage. You're talking about this old fart freaking managing a team of like young, energetic guys. A
Yeah.
lot of them are like minorities, like Dominican, Cuban. You got Makata, Robert. You got African American, Tim Anderson. Like that's not the guy you want managing your clubhouse. Some dude that's from like the 60s and 70s that managed these ancient teams. So ever since then, they kind of just went on a tailspin after that. Like nobody respected La Russa. You saw him all over the news for making boneheaded decisions, falling asleep in the dugout. And then they kind of have to save face that he ends up retiring again because I mean they don't want to fire Tony La Russa because he's a Hall of Fame tenured manager, so they gave him the respect to let him just walk away from the team. But they got the bench coach from the Royals. I'm forgetting his name, but not like it's important. So but he hasn't done a really good job this year at all. Anyway, with the talent that he's had, and then all this stuff right now that's coming out about the team, like him and the GM just haven't really addressed it correctly. But I feel bad for White Sox fans because I feel like since like 2015, they've been building up their farm system with some of these guys, and they had a lot of talent and it just didn't get put together. I feel like they should have taken advantage of it, but it definitely now they're in like another. They're saying it's like a soft rebuild, retooling for next year, probably because that division's so bad. But I don't think they're going to be really in contention for probably another 3 or 4 years. So, but that's just what I think about that.
It's just not built well. I agree. It's not a Mets situation where you think you could go and win like next year, or the year after. It's like I like what you said. I didn't really think about that, but La Russa did kind of derail that team. I think
Yeah.
he just had a lot of guys that didn't want to play, like they weren't having fun. And
If they were going to bring back a former manager, they should have brought the manager that went to the World Series with them. What's his
yeah,
name? He was energetic and he was a young manager,
he
but
was dope.
like you needed a different type of guy to like manage that type of team, and it's just not working. And managers are getting younger and younger. Like
Yeah.
obviously the Cardinals until this year, like with Marmol, he was the youngest manager in the Marlins. They got Skip Schumacher. I mean, like those are two teams that have young players on their roster. Like I mean, obviously the Cardinals have like their veterans with Goldie and Arenado, but a lot of those guys are just now making their debuts or made them the past 3 years, so they're all pretty young. So I definitely think that's where an area where the White Sox messed up at.
Yeah, I always say, I mean, that's my biggest thing is like, if you're not having fun, you're not going to win baseball games. I think that was a big thing for the Phillies last year. Not bringing up the Phillies all the time, but they were just having fun, man. Like, you got to enjoy the game. I know it's a job and all this kind of stuff, but if you look back at these teams, I mean, that even the Astros had fun when they win, man. The Nationals when they went on their run. I mean, the Cubs, that was like the best thing ever. The other side of Chicago is just dysfunctional at this point, and I agree with you too. I think managers are getting younger. Even Gabe Kapler. I saw a video of him today dressed up like an idiot, and I was like, I don't like the way he coaches, but I like his energy, and there's a lot of that. That's a lot,
Bench
right?
coach energy.
Right. There's a lot more, but there's a lot more stake in that now. You know what I mean? There's a lot more stake in your energy over your decisions because you have a lot of guys that can go win either way, I think.
Yeah. I definitely agree with all that, especially chemistry and stuff. But speaking of chemistry, closing out our topic, I feel like we have to talk about the recent events surrounding the Tampa Bay Rays. And I'm not talking about Shane McClanahan missing it with Tommy John. it's obviously a weird topic to talk about, but I feel like stuff like this has been happening in the MLB too frequently, with either domestic abuse cases or this. I mean, he's the second player to be accused of like dating and being solicited with minors.
Yeah.
Obviously, not going too much into detail with what he's done, but the Rays, I feel bad for the Rays because I just feel like they just got cursed this season, because they got off to that really hot start where they went, I believe, 13 or 14-0. They were leading the division for a majority of the season so far. Now they're not. They kind of been on a 500 skid since that scolding hot start since the beginning of the year. Now the Orioles have I believe, the best record in the American League, and the Rays continue to drop. They when the Orioles took over them, they had the second best record. Now the Rangers have a better record than them, so now they're kind of falling out of the top seeds. They still hold a wild card spot. They'll likely hold on to that for the rest of the year, in my mind. But they're losing a lot of players. I mean, Wander Franco is a good baseball player. He's a face of their lineup. You losing him not only takes him out of your lineup and potentially could help you make you lose games, but I kind of want to know what's going on in that clubhouse because I feel like I've seen it personally and how it can affect the season outlook like down the line and how it can mess with you for like the future. Obviously, I already mentioned Trevor Bauer earlier, and his thing, I mean, was serious. A lot of the things he got proven innocent, and then Dodgers ended up cutting ties. But I remember that entire season that his name kept getting brought up. It's a topic that wouldn't go away, and then it kind of ended up fucking with them even now because when he got reinstated, the Dodgers were responsible for all the money that he was owed, and then they ended up cutting him or DFAing him, and then they had to end up paying him for the salary for this season as well, which kind of messed up if they had any plans in free agency, it kind of threw a curveball on that. Wander Franco is kind of in the same boat. He just signed that long-term deal. That was like I believe 11 years, 182 million is what I have written down. But it had incentives to where it could be worth like 200 or so million dollars. Obviously, he's not going to get those incentives now, or at least this season. I think he's done for this season. I definitely think if more stuff comes out, I'm pretty sure his career is over. So I'm kind of interested to see what you think, like the clubhouse is thinking, and if you think he'll even play again.
Yeah, I feel when we said we felt bad for White Sox fans, I think I feel more bad for Rays fans right now. As a To Catch a Predator expert, because I've watched every episode of that goddamn show. Why wouldn't he go to jail? He's openly dating and engaged with this young girl, and it wasn't even us. It was the Dominican Republic, like police and investigation, and all that kind of stuff. So it's like an international thing. I mean, we probably have the U.S. government probably has some saying in something like that. But like you said, he's definitely done for the year. When you're not in the lineup for your own bobblehead night, yes, you might have a little bit of a problem, dog.
Yeah.
I think you feel bad for Rays fans, man. You have this superstar. It's this big deal, the cheap deal. I mean, he was playing like a superstar on like an $18 million a year contract. You just feel bad for him, and now they lose their ace, this guy that was like a Cy Young candidate last year. But I don't know, man. I just feel bad for them all, other than Wander Franco.
I definitely think it changes their outlook because if you ask me, like before all this stuff came out, and if the playoffs started today, I would definitely put the Rays up there to still like probably be like the top 3 teams in the American League that would probably make a run at the World Series. I don't think they're going to do that now, just because I think now they've been hit with the injury bug and the sexual assault bug or whatever, the minority predator bug. I don't know how you can label it. I think something like that would probably really mess with the clubhouse vibe, considering like they gave him that deal. He is young. I think he's like 22, 23, but he's like the face of their franchise. If you ask like a common fan, like, all right, give me a 2023 Tampa Bay Ray player, they probably name him most of the time. It's very unfortunate that all this stuff happened. if it's all proven true and he does get like prosecuted and all that, I mean, the Rays would void the contract, so there's that for them.
Bonus.
Yeah, so the team friendly deal with a superstar, it would be voided. That's the only reason why the Dodgers had to pay Bauer back, because he not only was he innocent, but he won his appeal. I don't think Franco's going to win his appeal on this. So I think if everything comes out, like Ken Rosenthal reported that the Dominican Republic, they're looking into it more. Like you said, it was a their issue, and they're bringing it up to the MLB and then the United States. So power of the internet and photographs, man, because I feel like if something like this happened in like the 80s, you would never fucking hear about it, because they did it all the time back then. If you even go further back, like 50s, 60s, 70s, this was not like I mean, that was the times, but it just wasn't a thing that would get reported, because this girl wouldn't have had the power, so we would have never heard about it. So it sucks for him. It sucks for baseball that it's the second time a minority. Shout out to Felipe Vasquez in the PCL league.
Did he change his name? What was his name? Felipe Rivera or something.
But yeah, I feel bad for the Rays, and it definitely changes my outlook on them for the American League playoffs. So it'd be shocking if they missed the playoffs, because that is still a realistically possibility, because that division is extremely tight. The Blue Jays probably have the best shot at overlapping them, and the Blue Jays and the Red Sox and Yankees, like even the Yankees are having a shitty year, they're still technically in that hunt for a playoff spot, just because of how that division is. But definitely sucks for them.
Yeah, I mean, what you said, I don't think they missed the playoffs. We always say it. You can't really count out the Rays, even with all this shit that's happening. They always find a way to win. I mean, they're always there. They're always winning games. I hope when I turn my phone on that the Blue Jays didn't beat us again. So I agree with what you said. The Blue Jays are probably the next team there, but I don't think the Rays miss out. But now you can see how deep do they go. They're missing their top starter. They're missing their star player at shortstop. Randy's been a god, but what else do you got out there, honestly?
Yeah. Well, that about does it for this episode of ClubCast. We talked about a bunch of things, mostly in the National League, going from the MVP races, going down to the top 3 or 4 teams in the National League, and then ending it on some sour notes at the end. But definitely think it's stuff that needs to be talked about. It's big news in the MLB right now. So we'll definitely be back again with episode 4, hopefully next week, same time. But other than that, I'm out.
Deuces.